Today I'm going to talk about my biggest personal financial mistake during the financial crisis of 2008-2009. Even professionals are not immune from making mistakes. So let's go for a walk and I'll talk to you about the mistakes, plural, that I made during the financial crisis of 2008-2009. It feels like it wasn't that long ago, but the truth is it's 14 years ago that it started. I suspect many of my viewers lived through it. Many of my viewers had enough money during that period of time that it was painful. For a reminder, for folks that didn't live through it, October 2007 is when the market reached its high, both the Dow Jones Industrial Average and the S&P 500. And then over the next 16 months until March of 2009, the market basically went down, right? I mean, it had some very scary down days. It also had some encouraging up days and times that we thought it was we were done with the worst of it, right? We had turned the corner. But unfortunately, that turned out not to be the case. It took over a year for the correction to take place, almost a year and a half. I think it's 16 or 17 months. And during that period of time, the Dow Jones Industrial Average fell by over 50%, 50. And the S&P 500 fell by almost 60%. Not quite, but almost 60%. Those are life-changing numbers. Those are scary things. And when you think about the bank system melting down and maybe the banking system as we know it, not being around after the financial crisis, those are big changes that, hopefully this is going to be a temporary situation. But when you're in the middle of something like this, the reason the market falls like that is it's very scary. Now we can look back and say, okay, that was a correction. There were some systemic things that needed to change. We can criticize the government, but I think overall the government did okay. Through that, they had some very difficult decisions that they had to make. I do think in that financial situation, it was really Wall Street was the cause of it, right? Because of their being overly aggressive. Here, let me turn around and give you a view of this ferry. Because of Wall Street being overly aggressive, you could argue being greedy. Main Street paid the price, right? We all had to bail out these banks, and that was super painful. But the long and short of it is we did get through it, and we had a nice bull market during after that. So let me jump in and talk about my mistakes during that period of time. A little bit of quick history. I think this speaks to what a lot of people's situation is. You hear me talk about the importance of asset allocation. And you pick your asset allocation based on the scariest scenarios, right? You want to be able to stay the storm. So that's something my wife and I got right. Because of what I do for a living, I knew my wife was, from an investment standpoint, fairly conservative. And down the pain of loss is much greater for my wife than the joy of gain. So really, for somebody our age, and we were both working, both had good jobs, making nice salaries, we were underinvested. Frankly, from the time I graduated business school in the mid-90s until the financial crisis, we were just under 50% exposed to the stocks, and the rest of it, super stable investments like bonds and money market accounts, stuff like that. So we were under allocated to the stock market, really because you have to be a team, right? You and your spouse have to talk about this, because it's no good if one partner says, "Oh, I can withstand a lot of volatility," but the other one can't, because that's going to cause a lot of stress in your marriage. And I think I've seen it, people end up blowing out at the wrong time. So we had the right asset allocation for a period like that. It was scary, but nowhere near as scary as it would have been if we were 100% invested in the market. So, the Dow Jones Industrial Average topped out in October 2007 just over 14,000. I think it was 14,150, 160, somewhere around there. And it proceeded to drop by about a third. It went down to 10,000. And when it got down to 10,000, I chatted with my wife and said, I think this is our chance for a do-over. I think we've been underinvested for a decade. And this is our chance to catch up, because the market had basically fallen down close to where it was at the beginning of that decade. So we kind of got what I described to her as a do-over. So that was a good move. But here's the negative move, and I think a lot of people do this. I got into the stock market too quickly after that. I didn't put it all in. I basically dollar cost averaged it in over maybe 100 days, something like that. Maybe, the Dow had continued to fall to like 9,000. But it would go on to continue to fall to like 66 something in March 2009 when it bottomed out. And so I basically suffered another 30% drop. So my mistake is I went into the market too quickly. I think people make a mistake when they make this change, and they're making this bet that, okay, in my case, the market's not going to drop below $10,000. I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment if you do that, and potentially a fearful situation. Now, so what did I do, right? I mean, the market basically fell another 30%, and my wife and I went from under 50-50 in the stock market to 80% in the stock market, so almost fully invested. So what did I do? Well, first, before I made this change, before I talked to my wife, I actually wrote down my notes. Here's why I think I want to do this. Here's why I am making this change. And I think it's a powerful exercise, and one that I encourage all of us to do, because you can look at those notes later and say, okay, this is why I made those changes. And those reasons are still true today. So that gave me some comfort. That gave me some solace. Reading over my notes and reminding myself why I made the change. I also had a little bit more dry powder. And I do think it's valuable to have dry powder. And when I say dry powder, just cash. I had something to sell that was not sinking on a daily basis, right? The problem when the market corrects is you've got nothing to sell. Everything you have to sell is down. So you have to sell something at a price that you don't want to sell at in order to buy something at a price that you do want to buy at. So you're kind of in this quandary. And in my case, because we had not gone 100% in the stock market, I had a little more dry powder that I continued to invest until we were like 90% invested in the stock market. And market continued to fall. 16, 17 months is a long time. Probably deployed that capital between Dow Jones being 9,000 and maybe 8,000. So it still dropped, another 1,500 points, which off of 8,000 would be, 15 to 20%. So still very scary time. I think I've shared in an earlier video that my daughter's 529 account, which in theory was supposed to have doubled over the last 8 or 9 years, was basically down to the amount that we had contributed. So, it's a scary time on all fronts. The other thing I'll share is, in a situation like that, you want to focus on what you can control. I can't control what the stock market's going to do, right? But what I can control is I was seeing interest rates start to fall. And in 2006, I had purchased a home that we ended up owning for about 15 years. But my initial mortgage was at 6.5% fixed. And as interest rates fell, I was able to refinance as the interest rates fell, eventually locking in. And this is, in the 2008 to 2010 or 11 time period. I think I refinanced 6 different times. I've got a video on a strategy on how to do that at zero cost. If you're interested, I encourage you to look up that video. If you just search my channel on mortgages or refi, I think you'll find it. But I was able to refinance 5 or 6 different times and eventually got it a fixed rate at 2.5%. So that was something I could control, right? Interest rates were low. I can take advantage of it. And I always look, you know, is there an advantage through this crisis that I can benefit from? And I think those things, having the notes as to why you made the change that you did, being able to go back, for me that works. I have a client that thinks that that's a horrible idea. He likes to say, you know, we're going forward, we're not going backwards. So, you know, I don't want to read my notes on why I made that change. But for me personally, it worked. And again, these are, you know, you do you, right? Whatever works for you. I share this as a way to just give you some thoughts on what would be helpful. So again, looked at my notes, controlled what I could control. Unfortunately, I had a little bit of dry powder. So this train's coming, I better go. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, give me a thumbs up. Think about subscribing if you haven't yet. Leave me a comment, I do read the comments. And until next time, I'm Asul, encouraging you to take full advantage of the youth of your senior years. Remember, you're only young once. Use this time wisely. Here, I'll give you a quick shot of the train coming through. They really are beautiful. It's good to be back here. So sorry about the noise at the end of the video. I hope you found it helpful. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.